Telecom to help in SeaWorld and SeaWorld's response, which I just read on the way over here. In fact, I have your letter to offer to help here. I didn't bring the response. You called it a nastygram. It was pretty tough. It was pretty tough. They basically accused you and the Humane Society of hastening Keiko's death and said what you did was extraordinarily cruel. So we have two completely different sides of the same story. That's part one of my question, if you could just speak to that. But they did make one point that I would like to hear you respond to, that the amount of money spent on this project could have gone to treating other animals, saving other animals, caring for them.
The first question is about SeaWorld has very publicly accused us of killing Keiko. They said that by trying to rehabilitate him and by sending him back to Iceland, as David put it, we hastened his death. And when they describe what happened, one of the reasons Teresa really wanted to make this film was because when they describe, when the industry in general, not just SeaWorld in particular, but just the industry in general, describes what happened, they imply by omission, by leaving facts out, that he went to Iceland and died. Like almost immediately, like he hit the water and just rolled over dead. And so Teresa became very, as I said, very impassioned about trying to tell the right story, the correct story, the fact that he lived for 5 years in Iceland and Norway. Regardless of what eventually killed him, he survived for 5 years in the ocean. And that's just a fact. I mean, that's not opinion, that's not, spin, that's just true. You see from the footage that he was very active, that he did in fact encounter wild whales. Again, that's just a fact. That's just true. It's not opinion, it's not spin. What happened to him between Iceland and Norway, we will never precisely know because he was out of visual range, but we had the satellite data. And you saw the track. We knew exactly where he was every 2 to 4 hours or so, and sometimes there would be breaks if the satellite was out of range. But basically we had a very good record of, sort of the general path he took. We know when he arrived that he was the same weight as when he left. And again, those are just facts. Those are not spin. So. And then we know that he lived for 15 months more in Norway. So did he die sooner than he might have if he'd stayed in Oregon? I can't tell you. Because Oregon was a good facility as facilities go. It was bigger, it was real water, it was real seawater. You saw him there, he was pretty active, he was very healthy. So would he have lived longer if he'd stayed in Oregon than if he had, not gone to Iceland? I don't know, but I don't think so. Because again, this is just a fact, not opinion or spin. He lived to be about 26 or 27 years of age, which is far longer than most captive male workers. So when Sumar died, who was 12, he was a young male at SeaWorld San Diego. SeaWorld claimed it was a congenital condition that they could not have prevented, him from dying of. He would have died if he'd been in the wild. Every time one of their whales dies at 5 or 7 or 11 or 15, that's what they say. So the fact that they accuse us of killing Keiko, even though he survived for 5 years in Iceland and Norway and died at 26, again, I don't think I'm spinning or expressing opinion when I say that. Just doesn't even make sense. That's not even logical. So that's my answer to that part of the question.
Have they made those charges publicly?
Oh yes, absolutely. It was their public rhetoric. I think they even did some sort of press, like press release or something, when Keiko died back in 2003. It was their public rhetoric that we killed him, and then they, of course, are still expressing that opinion, even though the facts don't support it. Again, maybe he would have lived longer if he'd stayed in Oregon. I have no idea, but I don't see why that's not a cause and effect kind of conclusion to draw.
What if he had stayed in Mexico City?
He would have died. Mexico City was very bad for him. It was artificial seawater. It was too warm. I don't know if you noticed in the film, but there was that area behind his blowhole there was a real dip in it. Mm-hmm. It kind of, he looked like he actually had a neck. That's a condition that, it's called peanut head. It's a condition that occurs when a cetacean, a whale or a dolphin is severely underweight. They tend to lose a whole bunch of blubber right behind their blowhole. They, like I said, they almost develop a neck. And it's not normal and it's not a healthy sign, and he had that in Mexico City. So my guess is, he lived for 7 years after he left Mexico City. He left in 1996. He died late in 2003. So my guess is he would have died within a couple of years if he'd stayed in Mexico City. I can't say the same for Oregon. That facility really was so much better for him, and he did regain his health so tremendously while he was there. So clearly he thrived there. And I said this in the film, I don't know whether he would have lived as long or longer had he stayed in Oregon, but I really don't think we did any harm to him by sending him to Iceland and Norway. If we had, I don't think he would have survived for 5 years there. The second question was all the money. That was a very early accusation before we even took him to Iceland, because we were building this facility for him up in Oregon. And I have two answers to that. One is people, including a lot of kids, were sending us their money for Keiko. Had we used that money to save dolphins and whales from fishing gear or whaling or global climate change, then we would have been accused of fraud for not using the money for the purpose that the children sent it to us for. Craig McCaw, the Nextel billionaire, that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to save Keiko. He wasn't interested in giving us money to do other things that we might have suggested to him. He wanted
Did you
to.
ask him?
I believe there were requests, because, especially from Earth Island, because they have so many projects going on, the tuna fishery to save dolphins and so on, But he wasn't interested in that. He was interested in Keiko. So that's one thing, that's what people gave us their money for. And then the second thing is just getting back to the hypocrisy point. Every time SeaWorld spends a great deal of money to start a new show or to build a new facility or expand the facility they have, that's an investment in their company. But, I could just very easily say, gosh, that's millions of dollars. You could put that into conservation efforts, and save a lot of animals in the wild. And that's not what you're spending it on. So, how is that not hypocritical? So it's not necessarily, I don't want to get down in the mud with them, but, that bothers me every time I hear that. It makes, again, it's just the pot calling the kettle black. It's an extremely hypocritical thing.